Oh.
Julie Andrews spinning on that alpine mountaintop wasn't the first take. It wasn't the fifth. It was take 28, and by the end, she nearly stumbled off a cliff while a helicopter tried not to decapitate her. The Sound of Music hit theaters in March 1965 and became the highest-grossing film of the decade. It beat Gone with the Wind's 26-year box office record. Families saw it 10, 15 times.
Oh, Reverend Mother, I'm so sorry. I just couldn't help myself. The gates were open and the hills were beckoning, and before I knew it...
Some theaters played it for 4 straight years. Nuns left convents after watching it. Austria banned it for 2 decades. And Christopher Plummer spent 40 years calling it The Sound of Mucus. Directed by Robert Wise, starring Julie Andrews fresh off Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music turned a real family's Nazi escape into the kind of movie that made everyone want to become a singing governess in the Alps. Today we're climbing every mountain for 15 weird facts you didn't know. Hit like and subscribe to TV Time Capsule for more classic film deep dives. Now, let's get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15. The real Maria von Trapp hated the movie. The real Maria von Trapp was hired as a consultant on The Sound of Music. She attended the Hollywood premiere in 1965, sat through the entire film, walked out into the lobby, and told reporters she thought Julie Andrews was far too gentle and the whole thing was historically inaccurate. Here's the thing. The actual Maria von Trapp wasn't a sweet, soft-spoken governess who won over the children with kindness and songs.
I was hoping against hope that she will say to stay here with us, because I really wanted that, you know.
She was strict, occasionally harsh, and ran her family like a drill sergeant. Her own children later admitted she could be difficult. The woman who escaped the Nazis by leading her family over the Alps on foot wasn't exactly the type to twirl around singing about raindrops on roses. Maria especially hated My Favorite Things. She told anyone who would listen that she never sang that song. It wasn't hers. And she didn't appreciate being portrayed as someone who broke into spontaneous musical numbers during thunderstorms. Maria's real favorite things were discipline, punctuality, and teaching her children to sing in perfect harmony, whether they liked it or not. But here's the kicker. The movie made hundreds of millions of dollars. The real Von Trapp family, meanwhile, was struggling financially. Maria had sold the film rights for a flat fee with no back-end deal, which meant she made basically nothing while Hollywood printed money with her life story. She eventually renegotiated and got a better deal, but for years she had to watch Julie Andrews become a global icon, playing a version of her she didn't even recognize. Maria later admitted the movie was beautifully made. She just wished it had been more accurate. Hollywood, as usual, chose charm over truth. Number 14. Christopher Plummer called it The Sound of Mucus. Christopher Plummer hated The Sound of Music so much, he nicknamed it The Sound of Mucus on set, and refused to talk about it in interviews for decades.
As I sound your signals, you will step forward and give your name. You, Fräulein, will listen carefully, learn their signals so that you can call them when you want them.
Plummer was a serious Shakespearean actor. He'd played Hamlet, Macbeth, and Henry V on stage. Then his agent convinced him to take a role in a family musical about singing Austrians, and Plummer showed up to the first rehearsal, realizing he'd made a terrible mistake. He thought the script was saccharine, the songs were too sweet, and his character, Captain Von Trapp, had no edge. So he drank. A lot. Cast members later admitted Plummer spent much of the production slightly tipsy, trying to make it through scenes where he had to fall in love with a nun while children sang at him. Plummer lobbied the screenwriter to give the captain more darkness, more complexity, maybe hint at some real trauma from losing his wife. The screenwriter said no. Captain Von Trapp was supposed to be emotionally distant, but ultimately warm. Plummer...
In the morning, I shall be going to Vienna.
Not again, Father.
Plummer thought that was boring and kept trying to add layers that weren't in the script. Here's the twist. Plummer's disdain for the movie made him better in it. That cold, emotionally unavailable captain you see on screen, that's not acting, that's Plummer genuinely trying to distance himself from the material. The moment he softens and starts singing Edelweiss, that took 40 takes because Plummer kept rolling his eyes between verses. He spent the next 40 years dodging questions about it, calling it sticky sweet and overly sentimental. Then, sometime in the 2000s, Plummer finally watched it again and admitted, "You know what? It's a damn good movie." By then, he was in his 80s. Number 13, Julie Andrews was pregnant and hiding it. Julie Andrews filmed The Sound of Music while pregnant, and the production went into quiet panic mode the moment they found out. Andrews conceived during filming in Salzburg. She didn't tell anyone at first, hoping she could finish her scenes before it became obvious. The costume designer, Dorothy Jenkins, was the first to notice. The dresses that fit perfectly 2 weeks earlier suddenly didn't zip.
Fräulein, you have managed to remember that I'm leaving in the morning.
Jenkins started letting out seams every week, adding fabric panels, doing whatever she could to hide the pregnancy. The production shot scenes out of order, filming all of Andrews' mountain and outdoor scenes first when she was barely showing, then saving close-ups and interiors for later when strategic camera angles could do the rest of the work. The final sweeping shots of Julie running through the Alps singing "The Hills Are Alive," those were filmed in the first few weeks of production. The intimate scenes in the Von Trapp house, filmed months later with Andrews standing behind furniture, holding props in front of her stomach, and the camera framed tight on her face. Here's the kicker. Andrews gave birth to her daughter Emma 3 months after production wrapped. And yes, she named her Emma after the character Emma Hamilton she was supposed to play in another film she had to drop out of because of the pregnancy. Number 12. The curtain dress wasn't made from curtains. Everyone remembers the scene. Maria takes down the drapes in the children's bedroom and sews them into play clothes. It's charming, it's resourceful, it's iconic. And it's completely fake. The curtain dress, that instantly recognizable green outfit the kids wear while singing Do Re Mi, wasn't made from curtains. Costume designer Dorothy Jenkins bought expensive Austrian wool, custom dyed it to look like aged drapes, then had it professionally tailored into matching outfits for 7 children. Why the deception? Real curtain fabric is heavy, stiff, and doesn't move well on camera. It would have made the kids look like they were wearing upholstery, which technically they were supposed to be, but Jenkins wanted flow and movement for the musical numbers. The studio spent over $15,000 on those curtain costumes in $1965. Adjusted for inflation, that's close to $150,000 today, for outfits that were supposed to look homemade and resourceful. Here's the kicker. After the movie came out, women across America actually started making clothes from their curtains. Fabric stores reported a run on drape material. Home economics teachers added repurposing drapes to their curriculums. The movie accidentally started a real trend based on a thing that never actually happened. Dorothy Jenkins won the Oscar for Best Costume Design. She never told anyone the curtains were fake until years later. And those costumes sparked unexpected trends in ways nobody predicted. Number 11. The movie caused a nun shortage in America. Convents across America reported a measurable surge in applications between 1966 and 1968, and they blamed The Sound of Music.
Oh, Mother, I could never be lost up there. That's my mountain. I was brought up on it.
Catholic institutions tracked the data. Young women, mostly in their late teens and early 20s, showed up at abbey doors saying they'd seen Julie Andrews as Maria and felt called to religious life. One Benedictine abbey in Minnesota reported a 30% increase in postulants the year after the film's release. They started calling it the Sound of Music effect. Here's the problem. The movie showed the romantic parts of convent life, the singing, the gardens, the sense of purpose and community. It did not show the 4 a.m. wake-up calls, the hours of silent prayer, the vow of obedience that meant you went where you were told and did what you were assigned for the rest of your life. Most of the Sound of Music applicants dropped out within a year. Some lasted only weeks. They'd arrived expecting Julie Andrews twirling in the Alps and found themselves scrubbing floors in silence under fluorescent lights. But here's the irony that nobody seemed to catch. The Sound of Music is about a nun who leaves the convent. Maria discovers she's not cut out for religious life, falls in love, gets married, and raises a family. The movie's entire message is, the abbey wasn't the right place for her. And
The Reverend Mother always says, when the Lord closes a door, somewhere he opens a window.
And yet, it made thousands of women join convents. It's possibly the most effective piece of accidental religious recruitment in film history. One Abbey Mother Superior was asked about it in 1967 and said, "We're grateful for the interest, but we wish they'd watch the whole movie." The real nuns, as it turns out, weren't as sweet as the film suggested. At number 10, the nuns were actual concert singers, and one was a man. The Abbey scenes in The Sound of Music needed to sound angelic. Director Robert Wise wasn't going to let actresses fake their way through Gregorian chant and complex harmonies. So he hired professional opera singers, put them in habits, and told them to look holy. The nuns you see singing in the chapel scenes were pulled from opera companies in Los Angeles and New York. They trained for weeks to get the sound right. The goal was to make the Abbey feel like a real place where women had dedicated their lives to worship and music. Here's the twist. One of the nuns in the wide shots during How Do You Solve a Problem, Like Maria, is a man. A professional tenor, specifically, brought in because they needed a certain vocal range, and none of the female singers could hit it. They put him in a habit, positioned him in the back row, and nobody noticed. The recording of that song took 37 takes, not because the singers couldn't do it, but because the acoustics in the set kept creating echoes that ruined the sound. They had to rebuild parts of the Abbey set with sound-dampening materials just to get it clean. Charmian Carr, who played Liesel, later said she stood on set listening to the nuns sing and couldn't hear herself think. The playback was so loud during filming that she nearly went off-key in her own scenes because she couldn't hear her own voice over the orchestra. Number 9. The opening scene. Almost killed Julie Andrews. The opening shot of The Sound of Music, Julie Andrews spinning on an alpine meadow while the camera sweeps in from above, is one of the most iconic images in film history. It took 28 takes, and by the end, Julie Andrews thought the hills were going to be the death of her. The problem was the helicopter. To get that sweeping aerial shot, the pilot had to fly dangerously low, close enough that the camera could capture Andrews' face as she spun and sang. But helicopters create massive downdrafts. The rotor wash hit Andrews like a wind tunnel. Take 1, she got knocked flat on her back. Take 5, knocked down again. Take 10, she tried bracing herself and still got thrown to the ground. By take 15, she was covered in bruises. The director kept yelling, "One more time," and Andrews kept getting back up, because that's what you did in 1965 if you wanted to keep your job. The pilot was flying at the edge of what was safe. Any lower, and the helicopter blades could have clipped the hillside. Any faster, and the downdraft would have been strong enough to actually hurt Andrews. They were threading a very dangerous needle for 5 seconds of footage. Take 28 finally worked. Andrews spun, the helicopter pulled back at the exact right moment, and she didn't fall. The shot made it into the film and became the defining image of the entire movie. Here's the kicker. That scene changed how Hollywood shoots helicopter footage. New safety regulations came out of it. Minimum distances, required safety coordinators, rules about how close aircraft could get to actors. Number 8. The gazebo dance nearly broke Charmian Carr's ankle. The gazebo scene in The Sound of Music, where Liesel and Rolf dance and sing 16 going on 17, looks effortless and romantic. Behind the scenes, it was a death trap. The floor of the gazebo was glass painted to look like marble. It had absolutely no traction. Charmian Carr, who played Liesel, slipped on the very first take and twisted her ankle. She kept going. By take 4, she'd slipped 6 times and was limping between shots. The cinematographer wanted the floor to gleam on camera, so they kept it polished. They also sprayed it with water mixed with milk to make the rain visible in the shot. Milk shows up better on film than plain water. It also makes everything incredibly slippery. The choreographer came up with a solution that sounds like a joke, but isn't. For the spinning shots where Rolf twirls Liesel around the gazebo, they nailed her shoes to the floor. Literal nails through the soles into the floorboards so she wouldn't slide. Carr had to stand in one spot, let the camera roll, and trust that when Rolf spun her, the nails would hold and she wouldn't rip her feet out of her shoes or fall and break something. She later said it was the most terrified she'd ever been on a film set. The scene took 3 days to shoot. 3 days of slipping, falling, reshooting, and Carr icing her ankle between takes. When you watch it now, that nervous energy Liesel has, that's not acting. That's Charmian Carr genuinely trying not to fall. Number 7. The Von Trapp kids couldn't stand each other. The 7 Von Trapp children in The Sound of Music look like the perfect family on screen. Off camera, they fought constantly. The kids ranged in age from 5 to 21. Kim Karath, who played Gretel, cried almost every day. Charmian Carr, the oldest, bossed everyone around like she actually was their older sister. The middle kids bickered about everything from trailer size to who got more close-ups. Nicholas Hammond, who played Friedrich, later admitted in interviews, "We were not friends, we were co-workers who happened to be kids." The younger children didn't understand why they had to do take after take. The older kids were annoyed they had to babysit between scenes. Filming took 6 months. 6 months of being stuck together on location in Austria, then on sound stages in Los Angeles. By the end of it, several of the kids weren't speaking to each other. Here's the kicker. When Hollywood tried to organize reunions in the 1970s and 80s, multiple cast members refused to show up. They didn't want to see each other. The idea of pretending they were a happy family again for publicity felt exhausting. It wasn't until the 40th anniversary reunion in 2005 that most of them finally showed up together. By then, enough time had passed that they could laugh about it. Carr admitted they were intense with each other. Hammond said filming was like being in a pressure cooker. Now they're friendly. It only took 40 years. But even with all the fighting, they pulled off the most complex musical sequence in the film. Number 6. Do Re Mi. Took 6 weeks to film across Salzburg. The Do Re Mi montage in The Sound of Music, where Maria and the children sing their way through Salzburg, looks spontaneous and joyful. It required shutting down half the city and filming at 4 in the morning for 6 straight weeks. The production needed permits for Mirabel Gardens, the Pegasus Fountain, the town square, and multiple streets. They were filming in real locations during tourist season, which meant every shot had to happen before the crowds arrived.